with
The
it.
reason I ask is because so many people, we work with so many people that are also like this. This is, I would say, a majority of women that are constantly ruminating in their thoughts, like you were saying, how you used to be like analyzing everything like this and this and this, this. And that is actually requiring a lot of energy in the body to do that all the time. So through my experience there as well, like, and just my life experience that I'm working as well, it's like when those thoughts are coming up, you have a choice to jump on the train to continue that thought process, and that train is burning a lot of energy, burning, burning, burning. But I think through this process and the lessons also through Rev, like of just slowing down the patterns, is like you see the train coming and you're like, you know what, I'm good. I don't want to go on the train anymore. Like, I want to use that energy for something else. That's why I was curious if that shifted anything.
I actually just chatted with someone recently in a consult who, same idea, like would ruminate and find out why and all these things and like intellectualize. And the way that her body responds was just knocking her out. Like she would just be very fatigued, had nothing left in the tank. And again, it's not the expending of energy physically, it was just mentally, just dissecting and dissecting. Yeah.
You said something, the work, right? We talk about the work all the time, and that's a saying that we say a lot, right? But a lot of people outside of our circle, when I say that, they kind of give me like a blank face.
Yeah.
The work is going inward, right? People come here to Rev, they have 1 or 2 30-minute sessions a week or every couple of weeks, and like that's the only work that they put in on their table time. And yes, we're there to help accelerate that process and allow them, but you did a deep work going those 10 days. The reality is 99.9% of people that are watching this are probably not going to have the time, space, and freedom to be able to do that. And you said something about the whole point of what you went through and what you learned is that to not react, right? Because when we react, we're coming from a lower vibration, we're not in our power, we're not equanimous, and it's right, really to find balance. So my question is then, like, can you take anything and kind of share a little bit about the process? And I think the first part you said, the Anapana meditation, like first becoming aware and then going deeper, like what can people do on a daily basis to put in the work? And what does that look like from like a real life, like practical use kind of thing? And again, we don't want to substitute the 10 days of what you learn, but like most people aren't going to do that. Like what can they do to gain some of this wisdom?
I mean, there is beauty in meditation, and I don't want to say that, because I think meditation has been watered down because it's, oh, just meditate, just focus on your breath, just meditate, just focus on your breath. But like to really sit very, very intentionally and carve out 10 minutes, like starting with 10 minutes. And this is the first thing that we did when we got to the retreat or to the course is called Anapana, which is just you focus on your nostril, like your nostrils basically, and your breathing, your natural breath. You're not forcing your breath. You're just noticing your breath. And the point to that is literally to train your mind to pay attention because what you're going to find with, even if you just put an alarm for 10 minutes is you're going to, okay, this is easy. I can focus on my breath. And then you're somewhere else.
7
and you don't even
seconds
know
later.
how you
Maybe
got there.
4 seconds later. Yeah.
You don't even know how you got there. And then you just come back to your breath. And then it's going to happen again over and over and over again. But the more that you do that, the more, like, the quicker you'll come back, the quicker you'll come back. And again, that's just training the mind. The teacher called it like we're doing very deep surgical procedure of the mind. And he said, he's like, if you want to change, like all the great teachers have said some version of this, of you have to like know thyself. You have to know what is going on here. So you have to spend the time doing that, to carve out that time, because if not, we're just on autopilot, so it's just starting out. But that was like the very first thing that we learned, and I wouldn't, it's important not to skip that part, but just to focus on your breath with no intention, like no like any other movement, just your natural breath. If it's deep, it's deep. If it's shallow, it's shallow. If you only feel it in one nostril or the other, that's fine. But just notice your breath without any thoughts, without reacting to it.
I was astounded on how bad I was at just maintaining awareness of my breath. But then they say something along the lines of like, when you come back, it's like almost like you celebrate it, right? Like
Yeah,
you're like,
oh,
yeah, oh yeah,
yes.
good, I
Yeah.
came back, even if your mind was gone for like 3
Yeah.
minutes, and like I literally remember like, what the hell have I been doing
Yeah,
for the last
you don't
5?
even
I have not
know.
been doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
And it's happening all the time.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you're saying that though, because like a lot of people say, I can't meditate because when I sit down and meditate,
Oh.
my mind's going crazy.
Mm.
And that's actually why we
That's it.
meditate. You know
That's
what I
it,
mean?
yeah.
But I just want to say that everyone goes through that. If you're like, oh yeah, like I tried and I'm just not, I can't, my mind's too crazy, I can't do it. Like that's actually the point of why we do meditate. So like literally sometimes within 2 seconds when I go to meditate, yeah, I jump on a train and I'm somewhere else and then I come back eventually and then I'm like, okay, I go again. So it's like,
Yeah.
that's the journey though of just like not letting everything pass. Is also what they said, like let
Yeah.
those thoughts pass. Like just kind of see them floating by and come back to your breath, let them pass. Like that's the journey.
And don't go into it thinking like, oh, I need to relax, I'm gonna meditate. Because it may not, you don't want to be attached to how you feel after. Maybe it's not a relaxing meditation. Maybe it's when you had to really work really hard. But again, I liked the productivity aspect of it. Like it felt like I'm actually doing something. You are slowing down patterns of your mind, of your brain, of your mind. And again, you're training it. You're training. It's literal practice of focusing.
I think before we go into the next thing, it'd be helpful for people to hear what a pattern is because we're saying patterns of the mind, but I don't think tangibly they're seeing or like applying it to like actually their day to day. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe if you have some examples, I can come up with some examples too of just like what that would be like in their everyday that
Yeah.
actually would be slowed down through meditation.
Basically any kind of reaction. Like any kind of like you have a thought like, oh, like it's your emotion that you have to the reaction. I think that's like patterns are again they talk about sankharas too, but basically anything that comes and we have a craving towards it or an aversion towards it. That's basically a pattern if it's something that you're reacting to. Because if something just comes up and you let it pass, you didn't react to it. So no patterns are created. If something comes up and you're like, oh, I really want to do that again. I wish I was there now. That's a pattern. If something comes up like, oh gosh, I hated that. I hope I avoid that. Like, I don't want that to ever happen again. That's a pattern. So what you're trying to catch before you get to that is your reaction to it. So if you practice not reacting, then you're slowing down those patterns.
Yeah, it's not to, and people might say like, oh, you're not supposed to want to have a good feeling. Isn't that the point of life, to like have all that stuff? And I had a little bit of a cluster F with that as well. I was like, aren't we supposed to feel joy and positivity all the time?
Yeah.
And I think the answer to that is yes, but the whole point is that you can become attached to that, craving it. And so it's almost like just allowing yourself to like, oh, that is what did they say? Like that's interesting. Did they say that, or is that where we got that?
We got
else?
that from somewhere else along
We
the
got
way.
that
But it's the same
somewhere.
thing. But it creates this neutrality. But
Yeah.
feel the pleasant sensation. Notice that it's pleasant. Like I really like this. The pattern comes when it's over and we want it again. That's the pattern.
And we're suffering because of it.
Yes.
Because that's not there.
I remember Dr. Suki's, infinity symbol in the book that we give a lot of people. It's like the positive and the negative swing, but in quantum physics and energetic, like it's the most powerful you can be is when you're in that center, when you're not too high and when you're not too low. And I think this is a perfect practice for people to find that balance as